Bali, Indonesia, May 27, 2005. Inside the crowded Denpasar courtroom, journalists jostled for space, cameras clicking, murmurs buzzing through the room. At the heart of this chaotic scene sat Schapelle Corby, a 27-year-old Australian woman, far from home, caught in the glare of a foreign justice system. Her face, weary and pale, showed signs of sleepless nights and months of uncertainty. Yet, despite her distress, there was something determined in her eyes, as though she was holding on to her last shred of hope. Schapelle stood accused of smuggling 4.2 kilograms of cannabis into Indonesia, hidden in her bodyboard bag. The charges were serious, deadly serious. In Indonesia, drug trafficking carries the possibility of death by firing squad. For Schapelle Corby, everything hung in the balance, her entire life dependent on the decision about to be handed down. But beneath the tension, beyond the headlines, there were troubling questions. Was the evidence against Schapelle reliable, or had crucial details gone suspiciously missing? Could allegations of corruption within the system cast doubt on the fairness of her trial? And what about the Australian Federal Police investigation into drug trafficking rings at Sydney Airport, the very place Schapelle's bag had passed through, that authorities chose not to share with the Indonesian court? In this video, we ask the question that has haunted this case from the very beginning. Was Schapelle Corby given a fair trial, or was she railroaded by a system already set up to convict? It was October 8, 2004. Schapelle Corby arrived at Bali's Ngurah Rai International Airport with her half-brother and two close friends. What was meant to be a carefree vacation quickly spiraled into a nightmare. As Schapelle stood at customs, officials approached her luggage, a simple bodyboard bag she'd brought from Australia. Unlocked and unassuming, it was opened to reveal something that would change her life forever. A vacuum-sealed plastic bag containing 4.2 kilograms of cannabis. Schapelle's reaction was immediate and raw. "That's not mine," she protested, desperate to make officials understand. But their response was swift and unforgiving. Within minutes, Schapelle was detained, thrust into a foreign system where she barely understood the language, let alone the laws she was accused of breaking. But right from the beginning, something didn't seem right. Strangely, no CCTV footage was available from Brisbane or Sydney airports, where Schapelle's bag had previously passed through. Authorities claimed the security cameras were conveniently out of order that very day. It was a suspicious coincidence that raised the first of many unsettling questions. In those crucial early hours after her arrest, Schapelle was interrogated without proper legal counsel, or even a qualified translator present, both violations of international legal standards. Indonesian officials later claimed that during these interrogations, Schapelle confessed to owning the drugs. Schapelle fervently denied ever making such an admission, saying she had always maintained her innocence. These immediate irregularities planted the first seeds of doubt. If the cameras had been working, would they have shown someone else tampering with her luggage? Why were the standard procedures ignored? Could Schapelle Corby truly be innocent, caught up in something much bigger than herself? When Schapelle's trial began, the eyes of both Australia and Indonesia were fixated on that courtroom. It quickly became clear this wasn't going to be a straightforward case of guilt or innocence. Something darker, murkier was unfolding behind the scenes. The first major red flag appeared in the testimonies. Customs officials stood firmly by their story that Schapelle had aggressively resisted inspection of her bodyboard bag at the airport, suggesting she knew exactly what they would find inside. Yet her travel companions, eyewitnesses to the whole incident, insisted the opposite. They maintained Schapelle had calmly complied with every instruction given to her, never showing any signs of guilt or panic until the shocking moment the drugs were discovered. But contradictory testimonies were only the beginning. As the trial moved forward, the mishandling of critical evidence became glaringly obvious. Shockingly, in 2006, while Schapelle was still fighting for her freedom, the Indonesian authorities destroyed both the cannabis and the bodyboard bag. Any chance of independent forensic analysis, fingerprints, DNA testing, or even verifying the cannabis's origin was lost forever. This meant that the one crucial piece of evidence that could potentially clear Schapelle's name was wiped out with alarming ease. Schapelle's defense team pleaded with the court, desperately requesting forensic testing on the cannabis to prove its origin. If it was from Australia, it would have supported her claim that the drugs had been planted before her arrival in Bali. But each time, the court coldly rejected these requests, refusing to even consider the tests. These breaches in procedure weren't minor oversights, they struck at the very heart of fair justice. When crucial evidence is mishandled or outright destroyed, how can anyone be sure of the truth? Without clear, impartial analysis, the courtroom drama quickly started to feel more like a performance designed to reach a predetermined outcome rather than a genuine search for justice. This begs the unsettling question: can a verdict ever truly be credible when the fairness of the trial itself has already been compromised? Throughout the trial, Schapelle Corby remained unwavering in her insistence of innocence. Yet, as compelling as her claims were, one powerful alternative theory emerged, one that cast the entire case in a chilling new light. Schapelle's legal team pointed directly toward Australia, suggesting the drugs had been planted by corrupt baggage handlers during transit through Sydney Airport. At first glance, it seemed like a convenient excuse, but soon evidence emerged that gave disturbing weight to this claim. Unbeknownst to most people at the time, Australian Federal Police had been quietly investigating drug smuggling syndicates operating at Sydney Airport in an investigation dubbed Operation Mocha. And here's the unsettling truth. That very investigation was underway the same day Schapelle's bag passed through Sydney en route to Bali. This raised a crucial question, one that hauntingly the Indonesian court never fully explored. Could Schapelle have been an unwitting victim of this drug operation? Was her unlocked, unassuming bodyboard bag simply chosen as the perfect hiding spot, only for the drugs to never be retrieved, leading her unknowingly into a devastating trap? But there was an infuriating roadblock. Despite repeated requests, Australian Federal Police refused to share their intelligence with Indonesian authorities, citing jurisdictional constraints. They held critical information, potentially the key to proving Schapelle's innocence, but their silence left the theory stranded, frustratingly out of reach. This unresolved mystery adds a profound layer of tension to Schapelle's story. True crime is often defined not just by what is known, but by the unsettling questions that linger unanswered. And so we must ask ourselves, what if Schapelle Corby was telling the truth all along? What if someone else's drugs had been placed in her bag, setting her on a tragic collision course with a foreign justice system? The truth, obscured by politics and red tape, remains just beyond our grasp, leaving us wondering, and perhaps forever haunted, by what really happened that day. On May 27, 2005, all of Australia seemed to hold its breath. Television screens across the nation flickered live images from the crowded courtroom in Bali. Cameras zoomed in on Schapelle Corby, her eyes wide, her body tense, as she awaited judgment. Families gathered around living room televisions. Coffee shops fell quiet. office workers paused their tasks. Everyone watching, everyone waiting. Then the moment arrived. The judge's voice rang out in Bahasa Indonesian, clear and firm. The translation quickly followed. Guilty. The sentence? 20 years in a Balinese prison. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Schapelle collapsed in anguish, her hand striking her forehead as tears streamed down her face. Her desperate cries filled the room, a sound of sheer disbelief and grief broadcast instantly into millions of homes. It was an unforgettable, heartbreaking moment that cut across borders. Australia reacted swiftly, passionately. A wave of public outrage surged, fueled by a growing sense of injustice. Prime Minister John Howard himself voiced concern, openly criticising the severity of Schapelle's sentence. Celebrities like Russell Crowe added their voices, expressing shock and dismay at what they saw as an alarming miscarriage of justice. For Australians, this was no longer about Schapelle Corby. It was about fairness itself. Her emotional breakdown in court became symbolic of a larger feeling of helplessness, frustration, and mistrust toward a foreign justice system that many feared had failed to offer her a fair trial. The debate was fierce, intense, and impossible to ignore. But as shocking as Corby's sentence was, it wasn't unprecedented. Across Southeast Asia, strict anti-drug laws and harsh punishments are commonplace. And Schapelle wasn't the first foreigner to face a severe penalty in the region. Consider the case of the Bali Nine, a group of Australians arrested just months after Schapelle's verdict for attempting to smuggle heroin out of Indonesia. Despite widespread diplomatic efforts, two of them, Andrew Chan and Mayaran Sukumaran, were executed by firing squad in 2015. In Malaysia, back in 1986, Australians Kevin Barlow and Brian Chambers were executed by hanging after being caught with heroin. More recently, Lindsay Sandiford, a British grandmother, remains on death row in Bali after being caught with cocaine, and despite international pleas for clemency. These cases remind us that harsh drug penalties are tragically common in Southeast Asia. Yet, what set Schapelle's case apart wasn't just the severity of the sentence, it was the troubling questions about fairness, procedural irregularities, and unanswered mysteries. At the heart of Schapelle Corby's story, beyond the emotional courtroom drama, lies a crucial question about justice itself. The disturbing irregularities that clouded her trial still hang heavily over the case. The mysterious absence of CCTV footage at both Brisbane and Sydney airports, the mishandled and destroyed cannabis evidence, the repeated refusal by authorities to conduct critical forensic tests, and Schapelle's early interrogations conducted without proper legal representation or translation. These failures in due process leave a lingering doubt that demands reflection. Even if Schapelle was guilty, and we have to accept that possibility, can we truly say she received a fair trial? If the justice system doesn't follow its own rules, can we ever fully trust its verdict? Schapelle's experience stands as a sobering reminder of just how vulnerable we become when stepping into foreign legal systems, where rights and standards we take for granted at home can suddenly vanish. After the verdict, Schapelle Corby spent years battling appeals, living behind bars in Bali's infamous Kerobokan prison. In 2014, after enduring 9 grueling years of incarceration, she was finally paroled, remaining in Bali under strict supervision. Then, in 2017, she returned home to Australia, 13 years after her nightmare began. Her ordeal, however, still echoes powerfully, teaching us something critical about justice. Justice isn't simply about guilt or innocence. It's about ensuring that everyone receives a fair, transparent process. Without fairness, truth itself becomes elusive. Schapelle's story calls on each of us to advocate for stronger procedural safeguards, especially in high-stakes international cases. Because when the system meant to uphold justice falters, the consequences are devastating, leaving lives forever marked by doubt. Every crime has a story. Every story has a lesson.